Good day. Welcome to Plain Talk. I am Philip Edward Alexander, and I'm joined in studio today by one of the best known environmental activists in this country. He is a successful businessman, among other things, and he's here to share his views on a lot of them. Gary Aboud.
Thank you, Philip. Thank you.
Been long in coming, this conversation. And we're going to take a very short break to do our intro. When we come back, we're going to get right down to it. Gary Aboud. See, you're jotting notes like me. They're not going to have enough time in this hour. Why activism?
But before we talk, what I would like to say is that two things. I wanted to congratulate you and your supporters because I've followed almost everything that you've said, and there's a phenomenal amount of empowerment and accuracy that you bring to the table. I think that is absolutely commendable. I've listened and hoped that we could have more public commentary on a lot of the outrageous things that we take for granted. And your group, and you in particular, have been extremely energetic at risk of all of the things that come with that. So my hat's off to you in that area, and
Thank you for that.
I wish you all the best in the upcoming journey of the elections and all of the things that are ahead.
Well, I mean, I think you skipped ahead because, like you, I started off as an activist, right? And but I wanted to know, and I want them to understand why people like us and people like you. So I wanted, in your words, why somebody like you who are so successful. I mean, a lot of people know you and your businesses, and they know you're successful. You travel the world. I called you the other day, and you're in China. I mean, why you not just enjoying your life? Why care? Why stop to look back? Why put yourself at risk? Why go to Guanapo dump to talk about issues that the people who it is affecting not seem to be giving a damn? Why activism, Gary?
God, Philip, I have a bad tendency to become very emotional about subjects like this. So I don't want to get upset about it, but it's very personal, and maybe it's because of my upbringing or friends that I've had, or perhaps the lady that raised me at home. But I never liked bullies, and I think a lot of the problems that we have and the neglect of dealing with the problems that we have is tantamount to being bullied. Oftentimes you have administrative bullying by neglecting to deal with a problem that affects one party and paying attention to the same problem in a lesser degree of another party is a type of modern discrimination that isn't called discrimination, but it's a discrimination of neglect. And it bothers me. I don't know why it bothers me.
Yeah, but you see, the reason I'm asking here, somebody like you in an environment like this, I mean, we've not shaken off colonial trappings for a long time. You wouldn't have the hurdles that someone from Morvan, Beetham, Laventille, and Sea Lots would have. Why should you care? Why should you care when so many don't?
I don't know. Sometimes I wish I didn't. I could just go and relax and enjoy a gluttony. Yeah, but
I feel that.
But I feel good when we do something good, and I feel a sense of victory. It's a strange thing to say, but when Patrick Manning used the word sustainable in the last night before the election that he won, we celebrated because we had been using the word in the 90s. So to get a politician to use the word sustainable, just the use of the word, To bring it into the local vocabulary was an
You
achievement.
thought it was a victory.
Yeah, that's a
You
major.
thought he was using it correctly.
Well, he didn't use it correctly, but just the use of the word introduced the word into the local parley. Now it's used incorrectly in every different forum. So we talk about sustainable energy and the sustainable quarries and the things that cannot be sustainable by nature of what they are. We're using it, but just the introduction of the word gives us hope that perhaps one day we would see beverage containers bill, which is based on sustainability and the idea of so sometimes small victories, as my deceased friend Jimmy Singh, Dawan Singh of the Communication Workers Union used to say, that we have to celebrate the smallest of victories because they're so difficult to have even a small victory, that we can build a movement based on small steps. Even though we may not see it, he said, in our individual lifetime, we must celebrate those small steps. I used to say, but we don't have a lifetime. We don't have that time. But in the larger scope of things, maybe that's what we have to do.
But Gary, what do you say to people that think, but white man, this don't bother you? You could pack up and go and live anywhere in the world. I mean, you understand what I'm trying to tell you? We have a very underdeveloped psyche as a country. So our collective speak is disappointing. People don't rally around the important causes. And I think that is why it is so difficult to stand. I remember when you were protesting the destruction of Invaders Bay. And I remember reading a Minister of Works and a Prime Minister, I don't call nobody name today, saying that they will move the mangrove and then they will put it back. And I thought, what insanity. How could you believe that it is possible to move an entire ecosystem, build buildings, and then put back the ecosystem? Where in the world has that ever been done? And the public just accept that. The public just move on with that.
Actually put it into law that there would be something called a no net loss of mangroves. It means that if you take out mangroves here, you would replant the equivalent amount of mangroves elsewhere.
But what about everything that was living in the mangrove that you move?
Yeah.
What happens to them?
Yeah. We're building impossible dreams. We're creating illusions.
So we write a law to fool people.
Yeah, to appease people and fool them at the same time. It's dishonest. But I hope that there are people listening to the program, and I believe, and I've met many of your supporters. I think that there are people out there who have what is called social conscience.
There are a lot of people who have social conscience. But what I don't understand
But not enough.
There are people who, when you drove to Guanapo to go and do your video to raise the issue, because I didn't know about it until you went. And when I did a video calling on the mayor did a video after saying, well, it's not really her responsibility. I wanted to answer her that the point that you were raising is that the fact that it was poisoning her burgesses is her responsibility. Yeah. But I'm having that argument, because if you're woken up enough to go and defend yourself, get involved. I have no problem with that. I'll take all the political attacks. I have no problem with that. But the people who are watching you, that dismissing the point that you're raising for partisan issues, do they understand that they are ingesting carcinogens in the groundwater, in the air that they're breathing, that 20 years from now, after this little political victory they get, do they understand that they could be diagnosed with multiples of cancers?
Yeah. And last year we had Aaron Balgobin's report coming out of UTT. As a result of, I don't know if you're familiar, Aaron Balgobin did an analysis of the frequency of people who get cancer, having a correlation of the frequency of their eating fish. And it found that frequent eaters of fish, of the Gulf of Paria, have a 6 times more greater average of getting one of the many types of degenerative diseases, including cancer, compared to people that don't eat fish regularly from the Gulf of Paria. So that is critical, and it requires serious analysis and further study. The government's position as well is not conclusive. They don't agree with the report. But the report was produced and published internationally, not locally. Why not locally? But internationally peer reviewed. So he got professors and technical
To
people
look into what he was claiming.
and to verify that it's a credible study and peer reviewed. It's the highest form of
Yes.
publication. Since that time, what our honorable government, this government, and the board of UTT, headed by an energy czar, the energy czar, Ken,
Julian.
yes, what they did is they dismantled the laboratory where this student produced this report, sent the professor who
Gagged it.
yes, they busted up the
They
laboratory.
gagged it.
$27 million worth of green fund
And-
equipment,
and-
split up in engineering and every department. So they splintered the laboratory. They sent the professor on pre-retirement leave 2 years in advance. And the professor is an internationally renowned statistician. She has been sought of after in England and Europe and Germany and all over. She's worked all over the world. She came back here to contribute to our country in her 50s. She sent on early retirement. And the study has been smothered, and the IMA come out and make a statement that is inconclusive. Who in the IMA is more qualified than the peer-reviewed professors who published this study? And it's just smothered. Likewise, in the Gulf of Paria, we produced a report at our personal expense to show that there's significant danger 5 years before Aaron Balgobin's publication, to show that there's significant danger, the professor wrote, of consuming Gulf of Paria fish because of the presence of hydrocarbon contaminants, the polycyclic aromatics, that's benzene and 7 actually it's about 30 of the polycyclic aromatics that are dangerous, but 7 of them are confirmed.
Who is responsible to bring that information to the public?
Well, we took it to the public.
No, but besides you, who in public life, who in public office, what department of state has a responsibility to the well-being and health? The Minister of Health?
Well, I mean, they're treating cancer, and we're struggling with the resources to treat cancer. But what is the cause of the cancer? There are simple things that we need to look at. For instance, there's no study to show in Trinidad what is the danger of living next to a highway where the rubber of your automotive tires is powdering, and people that are sleeping next to highways that are breathing this
Chronic obstructive pulmonary disorder, one of the leading causes, COPD.
gosh,
Bronchial diseases.
yes. So I feel
But
that
it is supporters of the government. It's supporters of the government that are put. I mean, I remember all these years when the dump in Betham keep catching fire.
it's going to catch fire again.
And you drive through that and your windows up. And even with all your windows up in your high-end vehicle, the scent is coming in your vehicle.
Yes.
The people who live in across
Yes.
six lanes of pitch, who are breathing that as their normal.
Normal.
What's going to happen to them?
Check the frequencies of cancer rate. Back in the 97, there was a study produced by Dr. Hamid Farabi, who was, I believe, an Iranian professor at UWI, and Dr. Hollis Charles, who became professor, I believe. And that study was published in Jamaica, not here. They refused to give me a copy of it here. Then I got a copy of it from a Jamaican who attended the professorial lecture there. And what it did, it was a comparison. 97, it was a comparison between degenerative diseases statistics in the 4 communities at the back of the Point Lisas industrial estate compared to 4 communities on the north coast, Toco, Grand Riviere, Maclot, and another community. And so they comparing the frequency of degenerative diseases, and one of the degenerative diseases I remember, which was tuberculosis, was a frequency of 22.7 times more than and then shortly after, like 8 years later, there was
So you're 5 times more likely to develop something like TB living in...
27 times more.
Wow.
And then a few years later, when the Pandey regime was in power, there was an entire fire station. There were 23 officers that got tuberculosis. Now, tuberculosis...
In Trinidad?
Yes, TB is real in Trinidad.
No, but you're saying that an entire battalion of firemen
Yes,
got tuberculosis
Yes.
because of location and environment.
because of location and environment,
And nothing's been done.
nothing's been done to look into.
And the
Hamid
villagers and the
Parvati
communities and the fence line communities of Point Lisas, nothing's been done to alert them
to alert them
to the danger that they're raising their children in.
in a danger zone. There's never even been any discussion on it. We took the report and we produced 300 copies of it. We sent it to every office and agency, everyone who could be considered a who's who. If we got 3 acknowledgements of receipt, we got a lot.
We need a lawsuit. We need a class action lawsuit on behalf of those fire services. Erin Brockovich, remember that name? Julia Roberts had made a movie where they found water was because of contaminants from heavy industry. And in the negotiations around the table, one of the women who was speaking for the company that was supposed to be liable, they were having a marathon session in back and forth. And then she said, look, there's no way for you to prove this. All of it is hearsay. We don't believe that the groundwater is causing the contaminant. And Julia would say, okay, no problem. The last couple hours, you've been drinking water from that stream. So if you believe that, you have nothing to worry. But she ran out of the room. Because she was drinking the very water that she was saying that was safe for other people to drink. And I'm saying a class action lawsuit came out of that. And then there's Flint in the United States right now. And there are other examples of that globally in the civilized world. And Trinidad and Tobago wants to consider itself potentially a developed or a first world nation, or aspiring to be developed and a first world nation. But we cannot protect our public, our people, the government, whose only job is the well-being of the citizenry. They do not want to take the steps necessary to protect the people from environmental hazards caused artificially.
Yes, we need a litigation on it, but yes.
The Progressive Empowerment Party has spoken about something called an environmental bill of rights. And I wanted to talk to you about that and people like you to say what should be on that bill of rights. I know Singapore now has a 50-50 green space law that you can't develop anything more than 50%. You can't move 50% of the trees. You can't cut down a tree without permission from the state. And I was hoping to get at some point, not condensing this interview, but I was hoping to get a conversation with you and others, like-minded people. Even if that's just one thing that we advocate for, if we get enshrined into the Constitution an animal bill of rights and an environmental bill of rights, we could start taking positive steps towards becoming a first world nation.
Yes. Yes, the big challenge is to get our people empowered, not just 3% or 5 or 10%, how to get the whole nation empowered so that they see beyond the political landscape into a nationalistic landscape instead of being sectorial, be national. That is something that we haven't succeeded at because people are divided. When we came, you've asked me to come on this program over the past 6 months at least 6 times, and every time I've asked members, they say no because this is a political forum. So when I came here, I was instructed over and over, and I'm going to take the opportunity now to say that we are non-aligned. Although in my personal capacity, I support the work that you've done. I'm not a supporter of the PNM or the UNC or the...
No, but we don't bring people here looking for support from them, No. What I do,
This
show does, is that we look for critical thinkers in everything, in the economy, in finance, in environment, in healthcare. We bring the heads of the police service, the fire service, the prison service. We've spoken to all 3. We bring ex-parliamentarians, and we want to get to the root as to why this country fails. I say nothing works in Trinidad and Tobago. And we have now a library of interviews of people like your good self who, I don't care what's your political leaning, I care what is your consideration for Trinidad and Tobago.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, we could call ourselves what we want. If the collective ship sink, red jersey, yellow jersey, green jersey, orange jersey, wet. So it doesn't matter. And I keep asking the question, how do people allow the brainwash into thinking that half a ship could sink and the other half could go its merry way. It's a physical, technical impossibility. But we allow it. We're lazy thinkers. Gary, we're lazy people. We're selfish. We're driven by immediate gratification so that we don't think beyond the plate and we don't think beyond the bed. We don't think beyond what I want right now. That's why our transmission of HIV is so high. Because we don't think beyond what I feel right now. And that's what keeps us as a little Neanderthal colony. Because Trinidad and Tobago, we were talking before the show started, of how blessed this country is. There is something called the gross domestic product, the GDP of a country, that's supposed to guide the economy and the development of the country, because you use taxation and legislation to guide the development of a country. But the income is the foundation. When they talk about the treasury and the treasury empty, there's no room nowhere full of money. There is a cash flow. There is money in and money out, like a normal business. There are the recurring expenditure of running Trinidad and Tobago and all of the opportunities to make money. When I tell Trinidad and Tobago, we have Caroni Limited. When Manning and Rahal shut down Caroni Limited, how long ago was that? Let's say 15 years have passed. In those 15 years, Caroni lands have been pushing up razor grass, bush, and a couple cineplexes. But it's enough land that we could have planted mangoes, guava, avocado, soursop, breadfruit. Those are very hardy, sustainable crops. Those are crops that will bear for 50 to 75 years. Mango, Jamaica making millions with mango. Avocado, Mexico makes 1.5 billion US a year just shipping avocado to the United States of America. Trinidad and Tobago could be earning money. A guava has 5 times the vitamin C of an orange. A breadfruit could feed a family of 4 for little or no money. It is the only starch that is low glycemic, so it stabilizes your sugar in a country that has some of the highest diabetes counts in the world. We're not having these conversations. We drive through and look around this country as if the devil could take tomorrow. And it seems the devil here.
Yeah, well, the devil is alive and well. As you're touching on a point here, I want to interject and say something. The energy conference is taking place right now. Right now. There were a few years ago, we were invited to speak at the energy conference. Well, after we spoke, somebody came to me and said we made a great presentation, but the only comment that they would have to make to us is that as long as we live, we would never be invited again. And it's true. 20 years have passed, we've never been invited back. Today, however, we got 8 years ago, we got invited to sit on the Trinidad and Tobago Extractive Industries Transparency Institute, which was secretly set up by the World Bank, because the World Bank have such a bad reputation, they don't want to be seen to be involved. And what it is, it's a partnership between civil society, the extractive sector, and government agencies that is supposed to be chaired by a civil society
Say
leader.
more about the extractive sector so the viewers can understand what you
Well,
mean.
the extractive sector is oil, gas, and minerals.
Anywhere in the world.
Anywhere in the world. So
And they're here in Trinidad.
well, here we have oil, gas, and aggregates.
But they're on the ground in Trinidad.
Of course, on the ground in Trinidad. So we have BP and Shell and EOG that have volunteered to comply.
Signatories.
They comply and they sit.
Are they signatories then?
Yeah.
Right.
And the signatories sit in that they share their documentation. But all the EITI does, when it was set up, and the office and the headquarters is in Oslo, which conveniently never want to allow FFOs. We've applied and we've been nominated, but they don't want us to represent civil society on an international scale because of what I'm about to say. So what the EITI does is it sets its scope to protect the treasury of the nations that have extractives. So when an oil and gas company or an extractor extracts a volume of the mineral, they have to pay a value. And that value, when they sign it off on their accounts, is supposed to be received by the sovereign nation.
How is that aligned to carbon credits? Or is that the same thing?
Nothing like carbon credits.
Okay.
This is just tracking that you took a pot of coffee and you're supposed to pay 5 cents for it. Now, it's not a determination of what value you're paying for what volume you're taking. It is only
It's an accounting.
it's an accounting process that you're supposed to, you paid, not what you're supposed to pay. You paid $5. Did we, the home nation, receive $5? Now, our argument is that is a fraud, because what you have paid is not a comparative value compared to what
You've extracted.
you've extracted. So you could take 50 cup of coffee in Trinidad and pay 1 cent. But in America, you take 1 cup of coffee and you have to pay 10 cents, which means that the US will be paid 20,000 times more of a value
For their resources.
for the equivalent volume.
Right.
So that is what we started on the EITI for. We want to know what value we are getting for what volume. And that is the international secret. But it's got worse. It got worse because we got the EITI to report on particular things that are occurring that we and all didn't even know. For instance, the quarry sector don't have anybody determining what volume they are taking out. Nobody checking to see how much they take. All we are checking is to see how much they paid and whether we receive. But how do you determine what they're supposed to pay?
Bringing us back to sustainability.
You know, bring up, of course, like my good friend Fitzgerald Hines, who liked to grand charge Rastafari. He's a good guy. You know, he's a roots man. He is a lifetime member of the Quarry Association. They appointed him as a Minister of Works, responsible for monitoring what they are taking from us.
As he's a member of. Himself to himself.
He's a lifetime member of.
Trinidadians don't understand the contradiction of those things.
So it gets worse than that. They owe hundreds of millions of dollars in royalties.
What if they go out of business? Declare bankruptcy.
Disappeared. It's such
So
a mess.
who gets that hundreds of millions? They can't recover it again.
It's such a mess.
Gary.
But Fitzgerald is a lifetime member now.
So he is a member of the organization that the government is supposed to be overseeing.
That he is supposed to be overseeing.
Himself too.
Because he's the Minister of Works. So, and that he is patronizing. Because the Ministry of Works is purchasing a lot of things from the Quarry Association, all their roads and materials. But it gets worse than that. The Auditor General seemed to have, you know, sometimes a thought can develop in different places around the planet at the same time. Well, the same thought can develop in different offices at the same time. I never knew, never spoke to, and would love to meet the Auditor General. But for the past 4 years, the Auditor General has been saying in his annual report that this country, he, as the chief accountant responsible for determining what we get into our treasury, he does not know how to evaluate the royalties.
There's no formula
for oil and gas, because no one in the ministry
correct
is checking.
And I've asked
how much oil and gas they take.
But I've asked this question. I've asked this question before, Gary, and I want to ask you, who knows, which Department of State is aware of how much of our mineral wealth has really been extracted over 57 years?
Well, the oil and gas companies.
No, we're talking about in our country, in our state.
We accept. This went to Parliament with Botuari asking questions, and the people from the Ministry of Energy admitted that there's no verification, but the Auditor General himself said for 4 years running. So it means that when...
So we could have had 100 times the money for our oil and gas that we've had. We could have had 1,000 times. We don't know. There have been rumors.
It gets worse than that. It gets worse and worse and worse.
Talk.
I'm just
saying that if Trinidadians only approach the conversation from money, I want to keep bringing it back to money. I want them to understand this. That everything that's wrong in this country, when you raise it as an issue, they raise the issue of money. And money, if money could solve all of these problems, and our money is being stolen at the tap, before it even reached the treasury.
Yes.
So you have a budget, and you say $60 billion, and half of the $60 billion is stolen. Yeah. I am saying that $60 billion should be $300 billion. We do not have an idea of our actual income.
I would say that's a fair assessment.
Somebody told me that 10 years ago, an oil industry professional who's now based in Dubai. He told me that because he was based in a multinational in Trinidad and Tobago. And he told me that, and I published that. And government ministers at the time said it was a lie. I said, if it is a lie that you cannot prove how much oil and gas is extracted from Trinidad and Tobago, then prove it. Then say. Because that's all it takes.
Right.
Tell us, one barrel is $60 and we put out 10,000 barrels. Don't tell us we were paid for 10,000 barrels. I want to know how many
There's
barrels.
no verification of the tap. And that's what the Auditor General is saying. So when
So that's what was at the basis of what just took place with AV oil. And somebody said to me, AV oil is joke.
it's joke. It's joke. The whole
So the $100 million
And-
is joke.
And I am arguing to you that this Prime Minister and the last Prime Minister are fully aware of it.
Both of them.
Both of them. And the Ministers of Energy. And they let it pass. They try to deal with it, but it's too big. The system is too big. And the energy companies finance the political parties, the mainstream political parties. So that we lost it. And the people in the country are so divided that they don't seem to care. As long as their red or their yellow gets into power, they can keep as much as they want. And there's even a large sector, more than 50% of the country, that believe corruption is okay. So we're in a kind of a quandary.
It's a mad place.
It's a moral.
It's a mad place. For you to defend, for you to say, when I raise the issue of the $500 million on the Red House, and somebody tell me, yeah, but the UNC wanted to spend $1 billion. I had to say in an interview on 95.5, don't tell me what UNC stole or could have stolen as a defense for what the PNM is stealing or could be stealing.
Yeah.
We need to stop it now.
Yes.
Nobody should be stealing.
Yeah, people tell me that all and they say, yeah, but they're stealing less than the UNC. Well, how does one evaluate that? Does that make it right?
And how does the disconnect happen that they don't realize that what they're stealing is from them?
Yeah.
How do you get Trinidadians
Yeah.
to understand that their children should be wealthy, that the average person in Trinidad should be worth a lot more money than they're worth now, that we should be one of the wealthiest nations on planet Earth? We should still be. We should still be. We should be leading the world in industries. This dot in the sea. This dot in the sea. If other countries had the pitch lake that we have, it would be on the cover of National Geographic every month. But instead of us monetizing and maximizing the potential of that facility, we have government after government taking pocket bribes to sell it on behalf of the people. Come and loot your pitch lake and sell it to somebody else. Fishermen, friends of the sea, we have a nylon pool. Gary, does anybody else in the world have a nylon pool? If the Bahamas or the Virgin Islands had a nylon pool, they would have shows on Discovery Channel about the nylon pool. It's a wonder of the world. We don't care. We have boats dragging anchors, killing the reef in Tobago. Nobody wants to put floating jetties to facilitate both the tourism and come back to your word sustainable. Come back to your word sustainable. We live in this country like Trinidad is one big dead buffalo. And all of us are hyenas and vultures and lions and wolves, and everybody just come in to take their bite. At some point, the carcass will be empty of meat. What do we do?
In my opinion, the fundamental problem we have in Trinidad and Tobago is an individual problem where people, our people here, seem to have lost their way. I'll give one example. 20 years, 25 years ago, I went and I studied for 1 month. I did 4 separate programs, intensive programs, mainly which were graduate students or senior government personnel. It was put on by the World Ecotourism Society, of which I have an interest, especially being from Trinidad. There were 4 delegates sent from Trinidad, each one to attend a different component of the study. One of them was Sita, who I still maintain a friendship, and she attended more classes than anyone else and then got very ill and so missed a lot of time. But what was really interesting is that the Trinidadians who were sent, senior government administrators sent to this training program at tremendous expense, staying in $300 a night hotels at a time when I was actually scrunting and didn't yet start my business. But nobody attended class. They would come on the first and second days and they would leave at the 10 o'clock recess and not come back for the rest of the day, and then didn't even attend the full week. And here they were being sent to study this global, this new emerging tourism market, this ecotourism, which is the most beautiful, least alienating form of tourism,
Sustainable.
in which Trinidad and Tobago is particularly well positioned. And they never attended the class. So the ecotourism product of Trinidad, of which the nylon pool would qualify, has just been left to run on its own course. And then while I was at the program, one of the professors came and said, there's a World Bank conference for government ministers, because the World Bank is putting in special facilities, loan facilities, to upgrade tourism capacities of the Caribbean. So Caribbean governments are sending all of their ministers and permanent secretaries to come and hear about this new fund, this loan facility to upgrade old and aging infrastructure, because the rest of the world is building so much new tourism product that our part of the world is left out on, and it's not properly financed, that I should attend and I should go to the conference. But you wouldn't believe it. A whole conference, 300 suited Caribbean governments, all the governments of the Caribbean send their delegates, everybody in jacket and tie with. And I just went as a normal average citizen in a t-shirt and a thing, and I went and I sat in and listened to it. 10 o'clock break.
They consider
50% left. 12 o'clock lunchtime. After lunch, there were 9 people left of 300.
Have you ever heard the term junket?
Oh my
Have you ever
God.
heard the term junket? That's what people in state office consider these things. It's called a junket. A junket is you get sent to a seminar somewhere in the world. You don't go to the actual seminar. You go to enjoy yourself.
Oh gosh.
So the state spent money sending a person to educate the person, and the person comes back without the education that they went to get.
But that was before the invasion of crime. Now, I don't know, because an ecotourism facility is not a barbed wire, and it's an open air, community integrated, community sharing, nature enthusiastic type of person will go there to enjoy nature, of which you would also want to integrate with the community, do farming with them, eat their food, lime with them. But Trinidad has become like a war zone now. So I don't know.
The latest actual report from the tourist sector literally lists Trinidad as the most dangerous place in the Caribbean. Don't go there.
Oh gosh.
Don't go there. And that is ridiculous, because Tobago should be the #1 tourist destination on the planet. There is nowhere as beautiful as Tobago.
Well,
Tobago's
nowhere-
Pigeon Point jetty with the hut at the end has become iconic. It is a symbol of wealthy tropical destination. And what's ironic is they use that image, but don't go to Tobago. Look at Rwanda, is a massive tourist destination. Colombia, a massive tourist destination. I call in these places because 10 years ago they were murder capitals of the world. Look at what proper governance has done. A proper plan to monetize and maximize. And that's what we're talking about.
But I want to say this, because I did stay on and I studied enthusiastically when I was there in Washington, and I was asked to work for the UN, and I refused. But I want to say this. Trinidad and Tobago is arguably the most biodiverse country on the planet, because biodiversity is not measured by number of species. Rather, it is measured by number of species per size.
Yeah.
So even though we only have, let's say, 193, for instance, bromeliads, because of our size, it's considered to be more. You can see more bromeliads, more orchids, more birds per square foot than anywhere else. Even more fish, except for the Philippines. Philippines is in front of us. So Costa Rica and Brazil in the past 20 years have shut off with their tourism product based on marketing biodiversity. Trinidad and Tobago hasn't done anything. We haven't created any infrastructure, any legislative infrastructure.
Boss, if you can't put a bikini on it and wine on it, that's the only kind of tourism we know. We call the 375,000 people that we get for the carnival product something. There's a cathedral in France that burnt down that still gets more tourists than the entirety of Trinidad and Tobago. We continue to vote into office people who don't understand. We call Trinidad Carnival the greatest show on earth. We can't even sell the broadcast rights. Nobody wants to see it. Rio Carnival, the sub-carnivals that they have every month. You know, Rio has carnivals in communities every month of the 12 months of the year that bigger than Trinidad Carnival, that leads up to their main carnival, or New Orleans with their Mardi Gras. What those things bring, and their communities and their country approach carnival as a business. So
Yes.
it is in your best interest to support culture and grow culture, because culture brings in money. It's in your best interest to protect your forest. Tobago have one of the oldest forests in the world. I was told that it is the rules that were written to protect Tobago's forest is what they use in the United States to protect Yellowstone Park. We don't even know the things that are here, and we will find out after they're gone. I was fortunate to have walked through the ruins of the sugar mill with the big wheel in Tobago that they let burn down. I mean, when I walked through it, nature was reclaiming it. But it was such a marvelous experience. My children will never see it.
Yeah.
And they will never understand.
You step back into history. I want to say something. I have an opportunity to say it now. Because you mentioned Invaders Bay, and I'm seeing a correlation between Invaders Bay and the Arepo Savannas litigation. And what it was is that in Invaders Bay, the Pandey regime laid in Parliament and passed the National Environmental Policy, which spoke about no net loss of mangroves. And 2 weeks later, they were bulldozing Invaders Bay. So we felt that it was important to defend the parliamentary process that passed this special law to protect mangroves. Likewise, in Arepo Savannas, they're putting a highway next to one of the wealth generating capacities of Trinidad. We talk about ecotourism.
We will teach the animals how to cross the highway.
They can't do it.
We will teach them. We'll put crossing guards. Gary, are being sarcastic.
The Arepo Savannas was a case fought to defend the professional staff who will very shortly no longer work at the EMA, because 7 of the 9 professional staff who have to review the application said do not approve it. Do not. The way the application is written, they condemned it.
Why should Trinidadians care?
And the managing director said no.
Why should Trinidadians care? They're looking at Gary Abu as obstructionist. Why should I feel like a channeling for Fazir Mohammed there? But why should Trinidadians care when they're looking at it and the government and the PR people saying we need this highway for development? To hell with the hairy blue crab.
But they don't understand. There's no traffic that's going to be alleviated. It's going to create a shortcut that everybody who goes through the Valencia bypass. The Valencia bypass already solves the problem if you're going there. All they need to do is to widen that Valencia stretch to channel that traffic into the Grandy area and to bypass it around Grandy, because the bottleneck occurs in Grandy. Taking this highway from Kumuto, which only has a few hundred people living, and the road to get to the Kumuto, to that Arepo Savannas, you're going to have to put major road infrastructure in an area that doesn't have a population. So why are you putting in all that infrastructure in an area?
Why should Trinidadians care about the environment? Why should they care about the animals? Why? Because that's the question they're going to ask. And that is the insipidity of this country. That we don't understand that tomorrow has a value too. It's not just now. So we will hunt all. If they tell us you can hunt and kill and eat all, we'll hunt and kill and eat all. They've done us something as a people, Gary, where people don't care about each other. We care, but we don't care.
But the country wants development, and we are supportive of development. We're not a tree-hugging NGO, but development should occur in a way that is truly sustainable, in that wealth will be created.
just passed the United States of America as the most competitive economy in the world. I want to say all of this so you understand me. They just surpassed the United States of America as the most competitive economy in the world. It is half the size of Trinidad and Tobago. They have 5 million people living there, and they have more sustainable environmental policies like the 50-50 green space rule. So I'm saying to you, all of the things that we want, we could have. All of it. We could, Trinidad and Tobago's population could be 10 million people, and we could live in harmony with the environment. The country is run like I don't even want to say like a parlor. People in parlors know what they're doing. The country is run by people who come into office representing people who want to build about 9 big projects so they could come out of the 5 years with $1 billion. Because that's the goal. To go and sit down on Miami Beach and clink Prosecco and pretend they're successful.
I grew up on Mervyn D'Souza and Francis Pervat and John O'Halloran,
Sam P. Wallace,
and Eric Williams, and yeah.
Do you know that the Justice Department in the United States, Trinidad and Tobago, and Sam P. Wallace was a test case that made the law? Trinidad and Tobago, Johnny O'Halloran and Sam P. Wallace, and the Caroni Racing Complex. Do your research and you'll find that this country's notoriety is global and far-reaching. Your work as
I grew up on P&M corruption, so I was a supporter of the ONR, but I was more of a supporter of an alternative to get away from the corruption. I didn't know what the ONR would bring. That was Carl Hudson Phillips. I didn't know them. I didn't really know enough about them, but they promised something different to the corruption that we lived in, that we grew up on. Trinidad and Tobago has not evolved from that corruption. We went from the P&M into Pandy, and that was a disaster. We went back to the P&M with Manning and back to Kamala, and everybody knows that was a disaster. Now, where are we going now? So people are looking for an alternative, and people are desperate.
$500 million was spent restoring buildings that, while it is nice to have, we do not need them right now.
Well, Manning government set up these special purpose companies, which, like Tidco, set up in the old guard P&M, Tidco,
and run this tenders process.
All of these are
it's just a hide and thief,
because they don't have to comply with any tendering procedures. They don't report to Parliament, and they're beyond.
I've asked the question. The company that was given the roofing contract for the Red House, nobody know them. The company that got the doors contract, you can find them on Google. I did a video. We Googled every single way that you could find Asset Industries, innovative, and couldn't find it. We had the people from Directory Inquiries live on air, searching every possible mechanism to find Asset Innovative, who got $100 million worth of contracts, 51 million of which was doors. We could have put in 25,000 doors in the Red House. Gary, the insanity that went on there. There's another company called Unicom. And Unicom, so Unicot, which is the special purpose company that is project managing Red House and President's House and Whitehall, that company appoints project managers in their company and then gives contracts to companies who then subcontract it out. Now come on. That's 5 layers of expense and that we don't need. And all it does is clouds transparency. How does Unicom decide who they're giving contracts to is outside of the purview of the Freedom of Information Act. You understand that? So if I give it to John Smith Limited,
yeah, you hide it.
John Smith could do everything after that.
Yeah.
All the corruption, all the kickback, all the bribery could happen between John Smith and everybody else. And the simple question I am asking is this. In something that you say, they say, is as specific and as technical as restoration. You say that. You say that this is not something that you could just pelt a stone at. Cool, I accept that. Then how did you arrive at a company like Unicom? And how did they then subcontract everything else? So why did they get the contract? We spent $60 million on the electricals of the Red House. Gary, $60 million will rewire the Twin Towers on Independence Square. It's $60 million they're talking about, you know. That is the insanity that is taking place in this country. And what you're talking about here just now, raising that issue of these special purpose companies, EFCL, EMBD, on the corner of Tragreet Road and Polkaroo Street, there is a school that was there since 1903, Woodbrook Presbyterian, the children's school. And the completion date on the board is 2014. It is 2020. We're no closer to it, and it is managed by the EFCL. If I go to the EFCL, the Freedom of Information Act, request, and they tell me, we gave the contract to John Smith, there is no way to pay us. What
John
happens
Smith.
after that?
So it brings me back to what I'm saying, because in support of your point, is that when I was a young man, we hoped that the ONR and then the NAR would solve the problem. We hoped, and they didn't. The solution is not to depend on the political change. The solution is that every citizen is responsible for that change. All of us.
Absolutely.
And your listeners need to take that message home and to talk to other people, because a lot of your listeners are listening in an armchair approach for those that have stayed this long. And they have that distance approach. Well, Philip is thinking they are not Gary dealing with the environment. We can depend on them. It doesn't
Popcorn.
work. It doesn't work like that.
They sit down and they eat their popcorn and they win to see what's all good.
They're looking at a show.
Yeah, it's entertaining.
Yeah. People need to get up and get out there to inform themselves, to spread the word, and to live the life of integrity. I have made bad decisions in my life and I have lived with them. But I've made good decisions as well. I have been offered corruption in my life, in activities that I have been doing that I accepted and couldn't sleep for months later, and months later call it off, and slept better than ever. And those are the personal journeys that I'm not judging anybody for being corrupt.
But you have to. What are you saying?
No.
Listen to me now.
People can redeem.
No. Yeah, listen.
People can redeem and repent.
I am a full supporter of redemption, and but as the Bible say, confess and sin no more.
Confess and sin no more. And I think for me, if I had done that $1 million deal that was offered to me by the Tobago House of Assembly on a property that I was selling in Tobago that they were willing to pay double the price for, but I had to pay the kickback. If I had accepted that, I don't think I could have accepted to come here today.
No, because you wouldn't have the moral authority anymore. If
I wouldn't have the
If
moral.
you have a conscience, it would fight you.
So I have to say thank God for them for approaching me with that
I want to
deal.
tell you this.
Because I wouldn't know myself.
I know. Oh, sorry.
But at the same token,
I know.
At the same token, if someone has accepted and gone down that road, I still think you could redeem yourself and come back into the world. You could. But we have to help each other. We cannot attack each other. We are still all here together. So we have to be able to come forward and embrace the worst people and encourage them to be better people. Because otherwise we'll have civil war. Because 60% of the country are in support of corruption. That's how to get things done. I was on a flight coming back from overseas, and I'm talking to the flight attendant. One of them is totally against corruption. One of them husband is a contractor with WASA. And she's saying, yeah, well, how the country will run without a little corruption. I don't read it. They've been compromised. They wouldn't get work with WASA unless they're corrupt. You can't get a more corrupt entity than WASA. And look, do you know we are paying $600 million a year for WASA from Desalcott? Why should we even be buying Desalcott water when we are throwing away water from all of our freshwater rivers? The water could be dammed and channeled and sent back into storage.
Talking like a pepper now, though. Listen, we said that. We asked, how did we design a water management system that catches the bounty of rainfall to dump it in the sea? Who was the idiot? Who was the idiot? Who is the idiot that allows it to continue? Us. You just said something about rationalization. Wayne Dyer said, when you rationalize, you tell yourself rational lies. And like your friend who said the country need to have a little bit of corruption. That's bullshit. You don't need any corruption at all. What you need is proper management and everybody get the opportunity to maximize their full potential. But cheaters need corruption. People who don't think that they can make it on their natural ability, they need to gang up against the rest of us and they need to use public office and access the public office, because that's a big thing now, you know. A big thing now is to be a financier. You're out in the parties and you're boasting which minister you have in your pocket, you know, in this dot. In this postage stamp, there is an Air Force base in the United States bigger than Trinidad. One man have the contract to mow the lawn. We, in Trinidad and Tobago, we live like there is no tomorrow. Raising children in a country where we are burning down their future.
Yeah. But it could stop if your audience spreads the story, talks to other people, say, look, we have to do something. But there's that disconnect. And I don't know. When I was a much younger person and we started FFOS, we thought and we hoped that there would have been a landslide of morality and public participation.
All idealists start like that. I know how that feels.
Yeah, and I still think that it could happen. It could be a landslide of public conscience.
When we first started the Jericho Project, and that's about 25 years ago, and that was to deal with the orphans, I remember sitting in a meeting with Jericho Project board members, and Robin Montano, the attorney, was there, and Renee Cummings, the criminologist, was there, and a couple other people, and somebody from the media was there. And at that time, the accepted idea was that no issue of the orphans will be on the news, and people already care about that. And in 5 years, we had an event called the Justice for Children March, and we put 25,000 people on the road, and it woke people up to the plight of children at risk and the orphans, and it forced the government to go and proclaim the Children's Authority Act, and it got subventions. There were orphan homes that were getting children from the state, that the state was sending children to the orphan homes, but they weren't funding them. So how you were supposed to mind these children? And it solved those problems. So I've seen firsthand, I've seen the work that you did and other people like you. But I live in a country where to pave the savannah for a 2-day romp, they dump a truckload of gravel on Eden Shan, and he could have died. He could have died. I remember how they treat Kublai Singh when he trying to fight for a sustainable. We could have both. You said it earlier. You could have as much capitalism as you want, but you could have capitalism with compassion.
Yeah.
Because globally, the conversation is now that 1% has more wealth than
99%.
And
yeah.
listen, but the bottom 20%, and it's unsustainable. You're getting to a point now where the world will collapse on itself. Trinidad and Tobago needs to look around at what it's doing with its devil take tomorrow attitude. A lot of people feel, well, if it get bad, I go jump on a plane and fly out. Even if that's your mindset, and you liquidate everything you have, we're getting the US from to take it out of the country. We don't even have US. You have to go in the bank every day and line up for 200 US every day if you're trying to go on a vacation. So if you're trying to liquidate to fly out to Trinidad and Tobago, you're going and start over somewhere. Forget the liquidation. You're going to work in a next man country. And if you don't have a green card and you don't have a citizenship, then you're going and work under the table to take under the table abuse, to take under the table money, instead of stopping and thinking. Because it's not easy outside there if you're starting over and you're hiding from ICE, the immigration people. We, the people, you said it just now, and this will always be the reason and the rationale, that all of us together, if we put aside our
differences, yeah.
Brother Marvin said it well, we are a brotherhood of the boat. All of us, our ancestors come here on a different boat from a different place for a different reason. Some was kidnapped, some was hoodwinked, some was running away. But forget that, we here. This is our collective condition now. If we burn it down, because I watch my father, my dad, he's in his late 70s now, but he had encephalitis and he had to have surgery. So, but I tell people, this same man 10, 15 years ago was jumping over walls. He could have run and play. Now I have to hold his hand and he had to walk with me. And And at some point, we all get to that place. At some point, we all get too old to do, and somebody else. But we have to then live the consequences of the nation that we left behind. Even if you're the most selfish fool in the world, you have to think about, how will I survive when I am a very old man in this country? Last night, a police officer called me. He in tears. His mother had a heart attack last night. She lives in Cuba. Rush her to the Cuba health facility. The Cuba health facility can't deal with her. They pack in 2 ambulances of humans to ship them to San Fernando Hospital. They're waiting for the second ambulance, like a maxi taxi, waiting to be full to move. This woman have a heart attack. Reach down into San Fernando and their emergency room in a mess. And this woman sitting, waiting to be attended to while having a heart attack in a nation that we are spending $5 billion a year on public health. This is ridiculous. I'll continue like this, Gary. The message has to be, you've been doing this too long. And I think that you've earned your stripes. I think you've earned the right to say to Trinidad and Tobago, because you've sacrificed a large part of your life that you could have used publishing what you're eating tonight, showing pictures of every fetch you're in, selfies from on the dance floor. You've used your life, your limited life, the thing that you can't replace. You've used it fighting for issues that affect all of us. Shouldn't Trinidadians and Tobagonians, because they just watch the government that tried to heavy hand me over the President's House and the Red House, who promised me 5 pre-action protocol letters, are now backing off and giving the public releases, because the public stood up and said, we're not accepting this one. We're not. They're not accepting those numbers. And the Prime Minister felt a pushback that he didn't expect. And I asked Trinidadians, we fought for Jumbo when they threw Jumbo out the Oval from selling his peanuts, remember that? So that Sunshine Snacks alone could sell. And the country pushed back. And next thing you know, Jumbo get a nice contract with Sunshine Snacks and everybody happy. Trinidadians need to know their power, and they need to use it for each other and for this country. That has to be your legacy, and people like you. Lincoln Myers, you remind me of Lincoln Myers. Lincoln Myers, who died. Raoul Panton. Raoul Panton was one catch-ass journalist, but a man with ethics and integrity to the grave.
Lincoln was my friend, actually, and my mentor. When he went and he fasted against corruption.
Against transparency, yeah. You want the transparency?
Yeah, on the whole of justice.
Since ONR days, yeah. That was the NAR.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
And they've been good people, you said. And somebody said to me, a few good people are all that stand between us and the darkness. I believe that. I wonder what this country would be if the government didn't have to consider that there still are people who are willing to stand up for everybody else. You could imagine if Trinidadians stood up for themselves, what this place could be.
If we could just purge ourselves of race. You see, this race insecurity is killing us. It's killing us. And I see it's so thick with the UNC and the PNM. The NAR brought together a group of people that were bipartisan to race, that wanted better, that were tired of the old guard and wanted something new and fresh.
And then collapsed in a heap of racism. When Bastille Pandit took his Indians and left, and Robbie went and became the Une of Ife in Africa, we can't seem to escape this bogey. I don't know why.
Yeah.
The colonials divided us by race, and the colonials left August 31st, 1962, and we still continued on their foolishness. But on the ground, in the gym, in the party, running around the savannah, lying on the block, eaten by the doubles box, we're not racist. So why are we racist? Why did David Rudder get to say how we vote is not how we party? Why do we allow ourselves to be divided racially, politically, and in everything else we okay? Why?
I can't answer. And I don't know what the end is. Perhaps we need to be threatened by something that could be a common threat that could unify us into one. I don't know. There's a mystery that we face. It's the quandary that we face that's keeping us back. We don't have. I remember I met when the Manning government was doing the smelters. they brought in a whole bunch of European and international experts to have a conference, and I attended at that time with a person that I no longer associate with, but um, there was a guy from Norway who spoke. And after he spoke, I went and I spoke to him privately, and I said, it's an amazing presentation that you've given, because it sounds as though your country are all in favor of the aluminium. And he said, actually, no, we're not all in favor, but we have conflict. But our conflict is always leans on the side of what is best for Norway. We don't have a division. When our parliamentarians sit, we have different political parties, but they are all nationalistic. They all want the best for Norway. He said, in your country, it's like being in different countries, and they get together in parliament and they fight and they squander and they disagree for disagreement's sake. There's no nationalism in this country. And this is a man who didn't know much about Trinidad, who just came to present at a conference. And it rang home, because I agree, and I followed Norway and the Norwegian model of development and how far they've gotten with so much less oil and gas than us. And they have a standard of living that's 10 times higher than ours, with free everything and limited the best education, the best hospitality.
Because they weren't creating millionaires to go and clink glasses on Miami Beach. That will continue to be the problem. That we have a rogues gallery, you alluded to it, of each government that come to power. There was one defining project that they stole money with that. And names come up that these people stole our money. I would like, as a prime minister, to go and meet with Justin Trudeau and say, boss, you see them towers in Scarborough in Toronto? Johnny O'Halloran stole that money from Trinidad and Tobago. This is the evidence. I'd like you to return our property to us.
And I know his grandson travels around the world first classes on a permanent holiday. That is cursed money, cursed wealth. I can't understand it. And likewise today, you have children and grandchildren of all kinds of corrupt families. I don't want to call names, but they're so well known and they operate outside of the radar.
Gary, if they put me in the parliament, the first time I stand up in the parliament, I will name every name. I want you to hear me say that. We cannot continue on as if what happened in the past
doesn't exist. From September 1st, 1962 to now, an accounting has to take place, and somebody has to lead that accounting. And I remember we had settled the Tesoro matter and Shell matter, and that's what precipitated, or so they say, the 1990 attempted coup. But Robbie wasn't the right man for them, because the right man for them would have put them in a cage or put them in a box. You need to defend this country. You need to defend the people of this country, even the people who've died and gone to their grave in poverty and squalor and sufferation, because we've had corrupt white collars and parliamentarians and public servants and unethical professionals who only thought that access to public office is a chance to feather their own nest and enrich themselves. We need to undo that. The rest of the country going forward, the nationalism you're looking for, they will believe in that flag. If the government gives the flag the authority and the respect it deserves. We say one people under one flag is the only way to get rid of that racist bogey that you're talking about. That's what we need to unite as, with common purpose. Make this a better country for everybody. Like a rising tide lifts all boats. That's where we need to go. Give me your closing comments. My closing comment is that you have a good chance to get into Parliament. I hope you do. Because even though it's, in my opinion, 60% of the country condone, accept, and even support corruption, if you could solidify the 40% who are God-fearing and have a public conscience and a personal conference into one unified body, that 40% could beat the 60, because the 60 would be split in two. If you could solidify a group, a moral majority, who might be a minority, then there is a hope. So I wish you all the best. I think you've done a good job. I hope that you would allow me to say this, that I think it's very important that we recognize that we live in a conservative society, so it's important that we are gentle in our ideas, because people can't take people. A lot of people are old, conservative, and very quiet old people, and very conservative, and they're afraid of too much of a rocking boat. So we have to be very gentle in how we coax them into. I feel like that in my life because oftentimes you go into court on a battle and the judge actually don't like us because we've jarred the judge. But it's a difficult balance because we believe you have to jar the society to wake up on the one hand. But if you jar it too much, then you offend more than you would a week. And so it's a difficult balance. I wish you all the best, Philip. Wish you all the best. It's a lifelong journey you're on, and I hope I can be of some support.
Thanks a lot for that, Gary. That was hopefully the first of many conversations we're going to have. Gary Aboud brings to the national conversation a lot of a wealth of knowledge, but he also brings decades now of sacrifice and experience, and he is a living example. He walks on the shoulders of giants that he named in his conversation, but he represents, and people like Gary represent. And in a perfect country, it is the people who are willing to set aside personal interest for national interest that are going to make the better country that we're all looking for. And I am hoping that people like Gary and others like him are the examples that the young people, especially looking on, choose to follow and emulate with your life. Having wealth, ostentatious wealth, is no benefit to you if you're not happy. If you're living in a country where everybody full of fear, you drive out of a gated community, the minute the gate closed behind you, you're in danger. What's the point? Let's get together and fix the whole country so we could take out the burglar bars from on the windows so that nobody have any interest. They have countries in the world, I want to go back to places like Japan. Businesses don't close their doors anymore because nobody have any interest in stealing. Could we get there? Absolutely. We have more good people than bad. Our good majority is a silent majority, and again we need to flip that script and change that. Thank all of you for watching. This has been Plain Talk. Stay safe, Trinidad and Tobago.